Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast with me, Jude Morrow. And first of all, the plugs at the top of the episode. Yes, I'm going to plug my own stuff. It's my own podcast. Leave me alone. So the first thing that I actually want to put out into the airwaves today is that we have launched our new networking mastermind group, which you can see all the details on our site, neurodiversity-training.net. And the benefit of joining a mastermind group is if you are looking to grow and market and learn about the ins and outs of business as a neurodivergent or an ally, you need to benefit from the expertise of others. And that's exactly what we are offering within that mastermind group. We will have monthly networking events. We will have monthly master classes. We'll all be on hand to answer questions and everything else. So you never know. Your next business partner or investor could be just sitting in there. So go on to neurodiversity-training.net, have a look, and I look forward to meeting you inside the group. The second point is plug Patreon. We're still looking for contributors to the podcast, people to help take it to the next level. We're completely advertising free. We have not sold out, and you can do that at patreon.com/neurodiversity gold podcast. My guest today is a sales and marketing supremo. He's actually worked at food brands like Cadbury's and Innocent Drinks, which I can't wait to kind of dive into a bit later on. And one kind of area that I feel is underserved when ND discussions come around is dyspraxia. So I am joined today by dyspraxic and ADHD champion, Frank Brown. Frank, hello.
Hey Jude, how's it going?
It's going really, really well. And whenever I saw dyspraxic and ADHD it's dyspraxia isn't in the conversation as much. And even though I'm autistic myself, one thing that really gets to me whenever it comes to neurodiversity as a whole is kind of autism invading it all, with ADHD being a close second. So you've got your diagnoses kind of later in life, and I suppose what I ask most guests is, what was your journey from childhood up to diagnosis?
Oh man, I think anyone that's been through the journey can probably talk about it ad infinitum. I'll try and keep it snappy, but in short, Jude, I like a lot of people growing up, I sort of struggled to understand why I thought differently. I wasn't sure, is this normal? Is this not normal? What even is normal? And I've often described it as often feeling like a bit of an in-betweener. So I sort of couldn't necessarily get certain groups. And, I grew up half British, half French. So I was like, is it that? I don't know if it's a cultural thing. Just couldn't quite figure it out. And it wasn't until I did quite well at school. And it wasn't until I got to university when effectively the wheels completely fell off. I just really, really struggled. And it was at that point, aged about 21, I got my dyspraxia diagnosis. I didn't get my ADHD one until I was 30. So, as you say, you often go through this journey of sort of discovering and sort of struggling along the way. And often, if you're doing well, people think, oh, you can't possibly be that. But as I say, for me, it was really being at university, sort of losing structure and suddenly just needing, I need to look into this, into myself. And, I got extra time and things like that. But the journey has pretty much been going ever since. It's been a decade since, and I'm still learning about it, still doing what I can.
It's late diagnosis though at 30. I mean, normally white males like us tend to have it pretty handy whenever it comes to diagnosis because there's so many underserved groups, like women and girls, anybody who's not white or anything else. And I suppose it begs the question, how come the diagnosis was so late?
You're absolutely right. And I think that's one of the reasons I became a coach was because I wanted to sort of offer the support that I never felt I had. And it was often just a case of what you don't know, you don't know. And so you don't know what to look for. So you don't know how to seek help. And when you do, you often don't know who to seek help from. And, ironically, I did a sort of pre-test at university. I sort of really banged on their door and sort of made them take me seriously. They booked in a psychiatrist to do an appointment for me for my dyspraxia. Ironically, they failed to turn up, so I went all the way 3 hours on the train for nothing. And then I was diagnosed eventually by a woman local to me, and she's become a huge sort of mentor and inspiration to me. And effectively now sort of business partner as well. So it's funny how life turns out. But as you say, growing up, when you're doing well, or when you're not necessarily showing the quote unquote obvious signs of struggling, you are often missed. And as you say, we're sort of both white males in middle class Europe, and many things have gone the way that it hasn't gone necessarily for other groups, as you've said. But even so, my story is by no means unique. I've met so many people who got diagnosed as a result of their kids. You know, my own mother got diagnosed in her 60s because of mine. So it really is true that one diagnosis is often multi-generational. And it really does touch on not just one person, but often ripples around the whole family and their communities as well.
Exactly. And I suppose with dyspraxia, right?
Mm.
Dyspraxia is not as talked about as other kind of ND ways of being. So can you tell everybody what dyspraxia is to you?
That's a great question. And even now, I often have sort of difficulties describing it. So, among other things, it affects your physical coordination. So, it was for me a bit of a recurring joke that I could barely catch a ball and that I was sort of always tripping over myself. It also impacts sort of processing speeds as well. So, I'm in the bottom 20 odd percent of people in terms of processing speeds. So, for me, that manifests itself in terms of often needing to revisit notes, take extra time. It sort of really, at the time, I felt it slowed me down. Now, over the years, I've sort of understood it a bit better. But as I say, even just things like struggling to tie your shoelaces or tripping over, like they're all sort of related. And again, once I got the diagnosis, it really felt like a light bulb moment. Though I should add, actually, I went for job interviews for years, and you know they put down on the form, "Do you have a disability?" And I would often leave it off because not because I was embarrassed about it or anything like that. I honestly just sort of forgot about it because it didn't strike me as a disability in a way that disabilities often present themselves to people visually. We tend to think of more sort of physical ones. And I was asked by HR once, why haven't you put this down? And I was like, honestly, I just didn't even consider it. And it it goes to show sometimes, you know, those basic struggles that we have of just keeping up with the neurotypical world often that we live in. So I think that for me was a really good example of, you know, the very people that were there to help me asked me, you know, why haven't you sort of done this? And I was like, good point. I don't have a very good answer. But it's often just the way we are.
Funny you say that. I don't ever remember, well, like back in the dark old days whenever I was a social worker, I don't remember putting down on any job applications or any applications at all that I was disabled. But because I suppose now that you've said that and made me ponder it a bit in my head, I don't know any different. You know, I've always been myself. I don't know what it's like to be disabled or not disabled, depending on what way you look at it.
Isn't it so strange? Like, absolutely. I think because I've known no different, and it didn't even sort of strike me as an obvious thing to do, although in hindsight it feels really obvious. But I I know in your TEDx speech, which was great by the way, I recommend everyone listens to it. You know, you
Thank you.
mentioned about sort of picking your battles, and that for me is a really good example of, you know, you sort of feel like sometimes you're catching up with people, and the way I often describe it is that, you know, we all have 100% bandwidth at any given time, you know, on a good day, sort of maximum. And on a bad day, perhaps 10% is, you know, because you slept badly, so that's sort of eaten away. Perhaps you haven't eaten well, or, you know, other sort of physical environments. And then mentally, I used to talk a lot about what I'd call my fog. Sort of, I used to struggle a lot with sort of overwhelm and anxiety and nervousness. And for me, it was like a physical fog coming down. And when that clenches you, you know, sort of like the Dementors in Harry Potter, it's really difficult to get yourself out of it. And again, it's sort of only now that I'm in this field and working with other people in it, and have taken the right sort of training and advocate a lot about neurodiversity, that I sort of understand how even sometimes the simplest things can be the most complex things for, you know, like-minded neurodiverse people like yourself and I.
And you know what, actually, this is just a quick note to the producer for Frank plugging the TED Talk. Make sure you send the extra check. We'll edit this part out. Um, but what I was going to say was the transition from, I suppose, secondary school to
Mhm.
university. Why was why, as you say, the kind of the wheels fell off at that point?
Mm.
Is it because university is less structured, or was it another reason?
For me personally, I think that was exactly it. So, as someone with ADHD, interest is really important, and so I was doing a course I was interested in. That wasn't often the issue. It was actually just a case of I had been so accustomed to a quite highly structured environment at school, certain homework hours and things like that, or sort of teachers that really cared, and a schedule that was really laid out for you. To, you're at university, you might have anywhere between 4 and 12 hours a week, so it's not exactly um, demanding time wise, but it is demanding in terms of everything that goes around it. Well, okay, if I live 20 minutes from campus, I need to leave 20 minutes before, not at the time. And again, actually, what do I do in gap in between lectures? If I've got 2 hours, again, but as ADHD and dyspraxic people, that sort of waiting time can be quite painful, where you're sort of just loitering and you're in between tasks and you can't quite move on. So I didn't know then what I know now, and again, that's why for me personally, I've become so passionate about providing young adults with support in a way that I never had. But as you say, it really, really came down to a sort of cold turkey, as it were, from being in a really highly structured environment to no structured environment at all. And as I said, you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't know at the time that I needed that structure. But there we go. It's part of my growth journey, and actually I'm very proud and grateful for those sort of struggling times, because they make you who you are.
Yeah, you learn from them. But I mean, cliches are cliches for a reason because more often than not, they're true. I suppose what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And this is what I was dying to get into. I suppose your background sales and marketing before getting into this neurodiversity thing we're all in now.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm very fortunate to have had effectively two careers, and in many ways, I've already had the career that I wanted to have growing up. So I was always very fascinated in why people do the things that we do. So a branch of economics, the degree that I did, is all about sort of microeconomics and human behavior and consumer behavior, and I love all that. And so for me, working in food and drinks brands was a no-brainer, because I love the idea of working on something really tangible, something that you can think, wow, I've helped bring that to life, or I've helped, put that in someone's hands and they're going to really enjoy that. And I was really fortunate to work at some fantastic brands. So you mentioned a couple of them. I worked at Cadbury's and Toblerone and several other sort of confectionery brands. I worked at Innocent Drinks. And I worked at Patak's and Blue Dragon and lots of food cupboard brands as well. So really varied. And what I liked about that was actually it tapped into many of, I think, the neurodiverse sort of strengths, which is creativity. And actually, when you're interested in it, hyper focus and empathy with, your colleagues and your retailers or your customers. So yeah, really fascinating world. Just like the neurodiverse world.
ADHD folk seem to really thrive in sales and marketing. They really, really do. And I've had loads of different people say to me that they've worked in different sales and different marketing teams. Now, there is no video really for this podcast, but a smile is coming to the face because you know that I'm about to ask you, do you find that a lot of marketers are ADHD, whether they know it or not?
I can definitely think of a few names that may not have yet started their journey, but would be sort of high on my watch list. I think there's definitely something around being able to express yourself. As I said, I always sort of grew up feeling sort of like a bit of an in-betweener. And one of the reasons was actually as a child, I was really emotional, really quite emotive. I'd cry a lot as a kid and things like that. But as you grow older and you start to understand yourself more, you actually realize things like empathy and compassion are wonderful things and really, really useful, and do translate into a career where, again, where it's marketing, for example, you need to be able to think like the people you're speaking to. What is their language? again, Innocent Drinks, for example, was a wonderful brand in terms of the way they spoke to people, and famously sort of big on social media and their sort of tone of voice, and all of those I really learned from, and that's helped me as I sort of transition into my own new career now, as you say, outside of that world of fast moving consumer goods.
Like with innocent smoothies, it's just whenever I read that, I had a bit of a smile to myself because I've shared bits about it on LinkedIn, but people that know me personally would know this. I got the gastric sleeve surgery a couple of months ago, and think I survived up to this point mostly on innocent smoothies with added protein. That was like
Uh,
my diet for at least 4 weeks, and it served me quite well. And I suppose with sales and marketing, you've left that, and now you're kind of in the coaching trade with conscious clarity.
mhm.
So what has that journey been like too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, I didn't get either my dyspraxia or my ADHD diagnosis till sort of later in life. And as I said, I'd been working about 7 or 8 years by the time I got my ADHD diagnosis. And on reflection, I was really pleased to get the diagnosis. It suddenly made me realize, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing, all these little niggles that often people have. I realized there's no need for them at all. Actually, these are really positive things. And I took the decision to sort of transition out of a career that I'd loved into another career that I was hoping I would love, and sure enough, I have. There's a really beautiful Japanese concept called ikigai, which, if you've not heard of it, imagine a sort of Venn diagram of four overlapping circles. It's things you can be paid for, things that you love, things the world needs, and things that you're good at. And I was thinking for a long time, what is this sweet spot of ikigai for me? And I realized once I got the diagnosis, it was just an absolute no-brainer because, as I said, I've always enjoyed my old career, but I realize now, knowing what I know now, how much I might have benefited from speaking to other people with the same conditions, getting some support, getting tutors, coaches, whatever it might be, even just the way I approach things with my direct line managers, those sort of conversations, they are so important day to day. And even with your partner back home or your parents, whatever it might be, that level of communication is really important. So, as I said, that concept of ikigai was my sort of guiding light into this change of career, and it's just so rewarding to speak to people on their own journeys of diagnosis and guiding their own sort of self-discovery.
Whenever you said that, there will be listeners smiling at that because we do that with all of our clients. What makes you happy versus what makes you money. Because there has to be a line struck between those four circles in that Venn diagram, because that tends to be the reason why people don't grow, because they can be great at something. Like people can be really, really, really good at it, then their heart's not on it. They don't love it as much. But whenever you love what you do and you love the service that you offer, that's when you can market yourself much more effectively, where you'll close more sales, you'll enjoy what you're doing, and you'll grow even further. And that's absolutely crucial, especially when it comes here. So another question we ask
Sure.
everybody whenever it comes to coaching is like, who is your ideal client? Like, let's say we get about 5,000 downloads per listener in this. So your ideal
Mhm.
client would be listening to this. Who is that person?
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. No, I love it. And actually, I was just nodding away furiously as you were saying that about, understanding what your value is. I think it took me a long time to work that out. And actually, what I've come to realize, my ideal listener or client almost is often people that want to work with someone who perhaps has gone through something similar. So maybe they want to go through a career of their own. I tend to attract, at first unintentionally, and then over time more intentionally, sort of a younger demographic of, say, under 30s who want some coaching, whether it's through guidance through university, guidance through careers, making big life choices, understanding values, that sort of thing. So I work a lot with the sort of young adult, early careers, age groups. Often it's sometimes the parents have led the conversation, but it really needs the buy-in of whoever you're coaching and whoever you're working with, because fundamentally, that's how change happens. Sadly, it's not a magic wand. As much as we might all think things like medication might also be a magic wand, if they were, the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper wouldn't be a fictional movie. Someone somewhere would have made trillions off it, and we'd all be taking it. So unfortunately, these things do take a bit of effort. But actually, for me, that's where the reward comes from. Is just putting in the work on myself, helping other people put the work in on themselves, and yeah, absolutely growing. So it's a real mixture of people, but as I said, I found that it tends to be under 30s, parents, families, young adults, people who, like you and I, Jude, sort of went through that journey of self-discovery and actually want someone to speak to and that they know they can trust.
That's the whole aim of what coaching and mentoring really is, isn't it? Is that you, in order to get success, and a very, very wise person said this to me about 5 years ago. In order to find success, you need to be around people who have got the results that you want. So you work mainly with people under 30, even families and people who've had similar circumstances to you, where how they're going to find success is by talking to you because you have the result that they want, and then they can copy your secrets, adapt to your wisdom, and everything else. I mean, you may have picked it up in the pluggy pluggy plug 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 at the start about the mastermind group. I mean, that's how I had to grow NTA. That's how I grew this business. That's how, we help others to do the same now, is because I went into a sphere of influence, and I'll actually give him a huge shout out. It's Gary Doherty of Think Network. For anybody that doesn't follow him, follow him. He's fabulous. Where I didn't think of that. I didn't think, oh, I need to be around people that are further ahead in their journey and benefit from their expertise. And whenever I did, my life changed. And I mean, whenever we do it, we see fortunes change all the time, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So, what results do people get from working with you? This is the marketing foot forward. What results can people get? Because everybody, all the coaches market themselves. I have all these degrees and I have all of these certificates, and I'm with all of these coaching bodies, which is just money every year for pretty much nothing. So, what results do people get? Because that's why people buy.
Absolutely. So two parts to this answer. The first is that you're absolutely right. And the way I describe it is you wouldn't take swimming lessons from someone that doesn't know how to swim. So if you're getting ADHD coaching, it sort of makes sense to go with someone that has ADHD or lives with ADHD or knows it well in a lived experience. So I think that for me was a key sort of underlying point to the brand. I called the business Conscious Clarity because for me, I spent ages thinking about what should I call it. And actually, I just realized the answer was in the question that you've just asked. What do I want people to feel? So the reason I call it Conscious Clarity is because for me, conscious is all about being intentional, deliberate, controlled, measured, consciously aware. And that clarity was, again, it was the opposite of what I used to struggle with, of that mind fog and that sort of day-to-day struggle where you often can't see the wood for the trees. So for me, conscious clarity in the end result of the deliverable for the people I work with is greater confidence, greater self-awareness, better understanding of how to communicate. Often the things that we've struggled with and not known why, and it can feel intangible, but everything is interconnected. So it's those 1 and 2 and 3 and 5% gains that over the course of your lifetime can just accelerate you to be the best person of you. So that's what I'd like to think conscious clarity is.
And but just as we're on the call, and I'm gonna encourage everybody to look at it, the Conscious Clarity site, which is consciousclarity.co.uk, and you have lots of little cool moving little icons on there, and it's busy, and I love it. It's just like the perfect kind of site, to engage you. So I encourage absolutely everybody to look at it. But
I appreciate that. And it's funny you should say pick up on that because you're right. You can tell it was built by an ADHD brain for an ADHD brain, right?
yeah, it was. I mean, I don't have an ADHD brain, but I very much enjoy it. But I suppose the next question is, I mean, we're coming to the end of 2022. Have you
Mhm.
anything exciting on the cards for the next 3, 6, or 12 months?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate in that I've built up a great network of people around me, whether it's clients I work with that's sort of seeing progress, whether it's, like yourself being on a podcast. I would never have imagined that sort of 3, 6, 12 months ago. So for me, I've been really fortunate that things have picked up as quickly as they have. And my biggest struggle, even still as a coach, no one's perfect and we're always working on ourselves. But my biggest thing is making use of the time I have. And as someone with ADHD and dyspraxia, I have more energy and more ideas than I know what to do with. So the plan very much is to continue to grow the coaching. I love the one-to-one element of it. I'd love to expand into groups. I was fortunate enough to speak to a whole teaching staff at a school the other day. There are about 120 teachers there. And again, just hearing the teachers share their experience one-to-one was amazing. So I'd love sort of educating educators, if that's the right term to use, on neurodiversity. Again, they often think about it that it's only something their students have, but you statistically you do the maths and you think, if there's 120 of you in here, some of you are neurodiverse as well, whether you know it or not. So loads of opportunity for group coaching. I'd like to do again more work with schools and businesses, looking to get the best out of the people that they have.
And I suppose the final question at the bottom of the episode is, how can everybody get in touch with you?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm actually not so big on social media because I've been sort of wanting to grow a foundation of stone and not reach too quickly. Thought of going viral is my worst nightmare. So LinkedIn is the best bet. You've been kind enough to shout out the websites at consciousclarity.co.uk. But LinkedIn, I have a personal page. I'm always happy to connect with people, and I've got a professional page as well. So yeah, thank you.
And just so everybody knows, that's Franck Brown, not just Frank Brown, because you'll connect with every other Frank Brown. But
Yeah, you
the
can
Frank
blame my
Brown.
my French mother for the French spelling of Frank there, just to confuse people. Yeah,
Yeah, but you know what? It makes you stand out.
absolutely.
It's not to confuse people, it makes people stand out. And I suppose to kind of further on a point that you made, it's a classic thing, and we see it all the time with people that come in and work with us. Is people have a million billion ideas and they want to set up a coaching business and a training business and a consulting firm. And I want fireworks and I want ponies and I want unicorns and I want chocolate chip ice cream and I want all of these wonderful things. It's all about getting like a good strategy down and um, because a point I make, harsh alert, right? Because I say it to everybody, where if you're sitting wondering, gosh, I have no time to do anything, yet your business isn't really where you want to be. It's all about like the vision of time. Is your time going right? Because as far as commitments when it comes to ND people, right? I say to everybody at the start, what are all your commitments? And it turns out about 7 hours, oh, I'm a board member for this, and I'm on a board for that, and I'm on a co-production board here, and I'm a trustee for this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and doing the other thing, and basically giving all their time to other people, growing other people's projects instead of their own. So I suppose you're doing great with conscious clarity. I suppose
I,
getting the clarity on conscious clarity.
I appreciate that. And actually, I think you touch on a great point there, which is that for every yes, you need to think about, well, what am I saying no to? In economics, we call that the opportunity cost. And it's, if I'm either giving too much time away for free, or if I'm sort of sat around watching TV for 3 hours, that opportunity cost is, well, I could have been studying, I could have been working on other things. So that that sort of shift in mindset was a big one for me. And once I realized that actually every yes, it might have been a distraction, yes, and that was not a healthy yes, was coming at the cost of something else. And learning to refine that and just be really razor focused is super key, whether you're studying or whether you're at work, in any line of work.
And on that note, Frank, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a really fantastic episode. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I'll be following you very, very closely to see how things go over the next year. And the final plug for the new Neurodiversity Training International Networking and Marketing Mastermind. Look at our website, get a 30-day free trial, come in, see what we're about, then be absolutely flabbergasted at the knowledge that you'll get, and hopefully you will stay. And that's neurodiversity training.net. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.